Thank you, Lori. Fantastic introduction as always. By the way, this is a world premiere here. This is the first time I'm speaking as the CTO of Stability, so you're all witnessing that. Anyway, so thank you for coming. Really great to find your way back into the cave here. So I'm going to talk about Stability AI and then specifically how we believe generative AI is going to be used in storytelling, because I think there's a lot of myth and mystery out there, and we're trying to keep it real for people and make it into something that's actually going to be usable and you know, make people's lives better, actually. So and what this is really about is for us is about empowering storytellers. We're not taking anything away from storytellers. We're making it better for them and easier. That's what this is all about. So if you've kept up, I'm assuming you guys are all familiar with Stability and Stable Diffusion. So you probably heard that there was a little bit of turmoil in the company earlier this year, and they almost went extinction. But then an investor team led by Sean Parker actually came in and took the company over, invested a bunch of money. They brought in Prem as the CEO, and Prem is a good friend of mine, and so he called me and said, Hanno, help me figure this out, and so that's why I'm there. We have James Cameron on our board, and believe me, he's not just a figurehead. He would never do that kind of stuff. He actually is involved. We were meeting with him, we were talking to him and his team, and so he really is helping drive our vision and our product roadmap forward with the force of nature that he brings to the table. So we're really happy to have him. And so the conclusion that we've come to is, and I'm going to use this as a tagline going forward, control is all you need. Because we really think, this is not a coincidence that I'm saying here, text to video is a fad. We really believe that. We think, you know, it's not going to be a fad in terms of people will have forgotten about it in 5 years. But I think it's just going to be a different thing than what a lot of people think. So this whole notion of, here's a page on a script, I'll just feed that into some AI and I get, you know, a 5-minute scene out of this. We don't think that that's going to happen that way. And the main reason is because you're losing control. You know, your artist, your director, your cinematographer, your visual effects artists, they all need agency. They need control. Like the other day, I saw the Sora video, you know, the new one where they actually announced it, and they had this thing with the mammoths there. Did you see that? Anybody see that video? So, and they're all excited about this. So I don't know how many of you work in visual effects here. Great, awesome. So you're going to know what I'm talking about. Imagine you're showing this kind of a shot to a director. What's the director going to do? In the first second, they're going to say, oh, this is awesome, it looks really cool. But then he's going to say, you know what, I need 23 mammoths instead of the 21 that you have in there. And the third one from the right, that's got to be the leader. Can you make it longer? Or we have too many females, or we have too many males, or whatever it is. And before you know it, before 5 minutes are over, we're going to have 25 notes on this shot. And now what do you do? Right, and that's really, you know, that's our approach, and you'll see. I'll give you a little bit of a glimpse of how we're going to approach this. This is still going to be. We're still very early days here, but I think there's some really promising things here that I can show you today. So that's why, you know, like I'm saying here, you have limited control. You cannot roll all these different production steps into one. So, for example, I mean, another question to you guys. How many things do you think you can actually describe in words? You know, from the view of, you know, what does the director actually want to see? How many times have you got an instruction from a client? You faithfully, you know, implemented those instructions. You send the shot back, and the first thing you hear from them is, "That's not what I asked you to do. I wanted something else." So because it's really hard to express in words what you actually want, and I think that's again a reason why we think that text to anything will be a part of what we do. It clearly helps automate a bunch of things, but it's not the be all end all. It cannot be the only solution. And so And then so also, in addition, there's a reason why the motion picture production pipeline looks the way it does today. It has evolved over many years, and it's been refined over many years. And so we don't believe that we have to just say this is all stupid and let's do it totally differently. That doesn't mean that the pipeline won't change. Of course it will change, and I'll talk a little bit about that too. But fundamentally, there's a lot of elements here where it just makes no sense to say, you know, the world is over, we're gonna change anew. It makes no sense to me. And you know, with the people that we have here, so Prem used to be the CEO at Weta. We have Jim here. We have myself here. I actually come from the studio world. I was the CTO at 20th Century Fox for a long time before Disney took us over. God bless them. And in the last 2 years, I spent as the CTO at Digital Domain. So you know, we have people you know in the company that really understand content production, so which is really helping. That helps us really focus. And so what we believe in is, you know, what I'm saying here. Actually, take my glasses off. I can't read this. You know, really this artist-centric approach that I'm talking about. You know, we're looking, like when I was at DD, we were looking at the entire visual effects pipeline. We thought, okay, how can generative AI help here? Where can it help? And guess what? It can help with every single step, whether it's modeling, whether it's texture, which is look dev, rigging, animation, shot modeling, lighting, you name it. Everything can be augmented with generative AI, but it doesn't necessarily get replaced with generative AI. So, and then, you know, so you have to have all these different, you know, controls on top of your text prompting or your you know, initial image to really get where you want to be. So, and then also, you know, the other thing is, you know, can we integrate this stuff into tools that look and feel familiar to you guys? That's really like a key point for us too. So, point I already made here is we have a little video here. So instead of just doing like one elaborate prompt to one video, we're looking at building a full stack AI pipeline. And I'm going to talk about some of these different steps here in a second, but it's basically, you don't just say text to final shot. You say, you start with this, now do this, now do this, now change the color, in paint the skyline, you know, relight this thing, what have you, replace a dog with a different dog, what have you. And so this is a simple example. I think in reality, you're probably going to have 20, 30 steps still to come to a single shot. So that's what we're looking at here. How do I get to the next one? There you go. So I will also say, how many of you guys have used Stable Diffusion? See, quite a few. So this is a correct statement, right? Artists love the Stable Diffusion, is that right? And I think the reason is there's those three reasons here, really. Is number one, you can run it locally. Maybe you can hear me like this too, but okay, I'll keep using it. So you can run it locally. So even today, the newest model, SD3.5, came out end of October. You can go to Hugging Face, you can download the large model, which is more powerful, but you need a pretty large GPU to run it. But you can also download SD3.5 Medium, which I can run in my MacBook here. So it clearly is possible to run it on a fairly, you know, accessible machine. And that means we have a lot of users out there, and a lot of users, because they can access it locally, they can now futz around with it, you know, like people want to. And so there's all these fine tunes out there. There's all this tooling around it. And that's, again, why, you know, we're the most, you know, successful image generation model in the artist community, is because you have this unparalleled control with things like Comfy UI, right over there. Probably, how many of you guys have used Comfy UI? Okay, not that many, but, and I gotta say, I'm an engineer and I Python and all that kind of stuff. I feel like Comfy UI is not necessarily for the faint of heart. You have to kind of know what you're doing, especially if you find a custom workflow out there and you want to download it and then use it. That's a little bit of an endeavor. And so that's actually one of the things we're working on. There's going to be a product coming out next year. It's going to be called Dream Studio. Heard it here first. And that basically is going to put us on a road to come up with a professional product where, you know, if you load a workflow in there or you design your own, it'll just work out of the box, and you don't have to deal with, you know, package dependencies and all this other weird stuff that you have to do when you run a Python application. So, but again, this is the foundation that we're kind of building on. Is this control? Is really this artist agency? And then, you know, you're probably familiar then also with, you know, especially with control nets. Those are things that I really like, where, you know, you start with something simple, and I'll show you some examples where you can really guide the image generation. And so we have a whole model family, though. We don't just have stable diffusion. We also then have stable video diffusion that sits on stuff on top of the image here. So the way stable video diffusion works, by the way, is it uses currently uses stable diffusion XL, SDXL, as the core model, uses that first to generate a still image, and then it has another layer, 2 layers on top of it to animate the image, and then create a high resolution version of that video. So that's how this works, and which is really powerful, because now we're actually working on a new video model that's based on SD 3.5, and that's going to come out in the spring sometime. So and it makes this really powerful and really usable. And by the way, now we have this other notion on top of this, which is, so we can use stable diffusion, the image generation model, to create novel views of an object that was presented to the model in a still image, right? So you, for example, you show it this water can here. It'll infer, you know, what this thing looks like from 360 degrees. Based on that data, now we can actually create a 3D model of it. Just infer it from there. So, and we're doing that, and we can do it in 3D, so for you know, non-moving objects, but we can also do it in 4D, and we can actually animate you know, an object like that, just starting with a single image. And this, in and of itself, may actually not be that interesting per se, because again, you know, how much control you have. But I think the point of this really is that I'm going to show you a set of tools that we're developing right now for, or have developed, and they're available today actually, for the image model. But because of this approach here, we already have a path in front of us how we can apply the same tooling to video and 3D as well. It actually makes it really powerful, because these things are all, you know, built on top of each other. And so here's a list of tools, and I'm going to show you a few of those, how they work. So yeah, okay, talked about that. I don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm kind of rushing through this a little bit. So here's our search and replace workflow. And the prompts that you see down there, those are literally the prompts that we used. So we had first, you know, the image model generate this image of the astronaut walking down the street. And then we said, okay, replace the street with a meadow. And then we said, okay, now replace the astronaut with this cherry blossom tree. And 15 seconds later, you have an image like this. And one thing I want to point out, especially with the cherry blossom tree, is look at how much stuff it had to infer, right? All the pigment, you know, which was covered by the astronaut before, some of the people in the background, you know, the architecture, you know, it had to kind of extend that skyscraper there, that whatever that looks like, further down, and so on and so forth. And it does it all perfectly. And what I really like about this image, by the way, is if you notice, the tree is growing out of the crack in the pavement. It figured that out, right? It didn't just have, you know, have it grow out straight out of the concrete there, where it wouldn't be possible. So, and the reason for that is because it's seen images like this. It's seen an image of a plant growing out of, you know, a crack in the concrete before. And that's why it knows that it needs to put it there. And that's actually a really key point about generative AI. You don't have to explain it anything. You just need to show it enough examples, and it'll know what it looks like. Imagine what this means for particle simulation. Is that me or is it a microphone? Yeah. Particle simulations, smoke, water, clouds, what have you. It's my strong belief that once we have, sufficiently well-trained models with enough data, that the water that's going to come out of a generative AI model, or the smoke, or the fire, or whatever, is going to look way better than what current physics simulation systems can do. Why? Because it's not a mathematical approximation of some sort. It's actually based on, oh, I know what fire looks like. I've seen it, in 10,000, video clips. It's that sort of thing. It's really powerful, and I don't think people talk about that kind of stuff enough. Is that we're not only going to make it a lot faster, we're actually also going to make it more believable. Some of the stuff that we've been generating is really amazing, and again, it looks real because it was trained on real photography of real things. That's really a mind-blowing insight. At least it was for me when I got to it. Maybe you guys got there half a year ago. I don't know. Anyway, this is another one. So the search and recolor. So the left side, that's the input image, and the right side is the output. And all we said is make the car red. And imagine doing this in Photoshop, right? You have to mask all this out and figure out which parts of the body get recolored and which parts don't. Then you have to replicate the reflection on the floor. From the floor, you have to recreate all these specular highlights. You need to know the mirror, for example, is in body color, but only half of it. But clearly the headlights are not, the windshield is not, and so on and so forth. And the model figured all this out. And here's one. So these examples here were not created by me, but the next one is actually from yours truly here, personally. I'm really proud of this one, and it's really powerful in my mind. So look at this couple on a park bench. So I used Stable Diffusion 3.5 to create this image. And I will say, by the way, I will be honest, there was a problem with her hand. She had like 2 handbags sitting next to her, and I used the search and replace workflow to just, say, in a text console, just said, look at the handbag and fix it. And it did. Really nice functioning, nice looking, singular handbag. And with the feet, the same thing. I said, fix the feet, and fix the feet. It was really great. And by the way, that's another thing for the future. I think a big problem that all these generative models have today is a lack of world knowledge. So one of the things that we're working on now is actually insert a lot of more world knowledge into the generative process. What I mean by that, say, Stable Diffusion clearly knows how to make cats, right? Because it's seen thousands of images of cats, but it doesn't know that cats are actually domestic animals. How do you relate to human beings, what they like to eat, and how they relate to dogs and whatever? Those things are not necessarily inferable from images, but we all know about them. Why? Because we communicate about them in language. And so, that's going to be a big part. And it's not just true for us. I mean, if you look at the research that OpenAI does right now with, whenever GPT-5 is going to come out, or even with GPT-401, they're clearly going into that same direction with the chain of thought and, multiple processing steps and stuff like that. So anyway, getting back to this here. So I got to this, and then I said, well, make that park bench red. And this is what happened. I mean, look at the details. It figured out, number one, that it should only recolor the wooden lattice here and not the iron cast framing of the bench. But then it kept all the details intact. The specular highlights, these golden, what do you call those, ornaments there. There's a few chips in the wood. It's all still there. If you go back to this one, and then go to this one, again, try to do this in a photo manipulation software with like Photoshop or something. How many hours you're gonna sit there, and you're gonna miss things. You're not gonna make it exactly the same. But this is exactly the same. We just changed the color. It's really good. So anyway, proud of this one. And then showing, if I can do it, I think all you guys can do it too. And it's it was literally just a prompt, make the bench red. That was all I said. So things that, and that's actually another thing I want to mention is where we believe AI is really powerful is you take things that are very tedious, take a very long time, don't really add any artistic value, and you turn them into things that take seconds. And so you can spend more time on, oh, I don't like this red, let's make it a different red. Or, you know, so you're thinking about the artistic element here. You're not thinking about, oh my God, how do I get that specular highlight back, right? I mean, that's not creative, that's tedious. Or in the words of Jim Cameron, mind-numbing. You know, 1,500 people worked on Avatar 2 for 4 years. He would love it if it was 500 people working on it for a year, so he could make a lot more movies, right? That's the other thing, is like, we're increasing productivity of artists that we're really trying to do. We're not trying to take jobs away from artists. We want artists to just be able to do more. And we were hearing this from directors again and again. Movie making takes too long. Making a TV show takes too long. I could make 3 more movies, 4 more movies in the same span of time if I wasn't waiting for, you know, deliverables and stuff. So that's why we're here. That's what we're trying to do. So and then just one more thing on the recolor. So you can actually do multi-prompt things here as well. Change the hair and let's say the color of the shirt at the same time. You know, change the eyes of the aliens as well as the, you know, some of the clothing or the skin color. So that's all possible. This is another one that's really powerful. Sketch to image, the control net. So you literally just use a hand-drawn sketch like this, and you can get photoreal imagery out of it in no time. So imagine what this does for, you know, concept art and that sort of thing. You just sketch something and have that generate 5, 10 images, and you say, oh, this is what I'm going to go, you know, work on more. Or if you don't like it, you draw a new sketch, or you change your sketch or whatever, which takes, you know, a couple of seconds. You load that in, and you get another image, right? It's that sort of thing. But it's, again, this is all about control, right? You know, how big is the bottle? How big is that glass? You know, how do they relate to each other? You know, that sort of thing. And then outpainting. So basically, to the left is the, on your left, that's the input. And then in the middle, we just said, okay, extend that to the left. And it comes up with a photoreal interpolation of what was there. And actually, what I really like is it didn't just kind of formally extend it out. It actually, you know, got a little bit creative there with this whatever that plant is there in the middle. And it all looks very natural. And you would think that the image in the middle is actually the original. We cropped the left one out of that. And then the same also with the vertical one. And so we're seeing this being used quite a bit in things like advertising, for example, where they start with the central image, which, you know, has the product or the messaging or whatever. But then you have these different applications. You know, you have banner ads online, or you have vertical ads online, or you have, you know, something else. You know, you have all of a sudden, you still have an ad in the newspaper or whatever, and they all need different formats, whatever. Huge problem in the past. Now this is, you know, straightforward to do, and really fast. I mean, this takes like 15 seconds probably to generate an image like that, maybe less, depending on what hardware you're using. And then the creative upscale. So that's a really interesting one too. So what this really kind of is another version of a control net, right? Where the image of the left really is just used to drive a photoreal generation on the right. And I'm not going to go into the details on how it works, but it's a very fascinating process, how this is possible. And so if you want, you can, you know, talk to me afterwards. We can show you tons of examples how this upscale works. You can take, you know, really low resolution input images and make them look photoreal, like you won't believe. And or you again, you know, you saw. I think the sketch to image, that's probably like the extreme version of the same thing. The same process still applies, right? And you can, for example, how about this? You have a shot done, and it looks, your client has a hard time, you know, envisioning There's an unexperienced director. They have a hard time envisioning what the final shot's going to look like. If you could run that through a creative upscale process like this, you could make it look photoreal or close to photoreal. And I'm not advocating that that should be your final shot, although some people may actually want to think that. I'm not saying that, but at the very least, it'll make client approval a lot easier because they have a much better understanding of what the end result's going to look like. In my mind, those are the winners for this type of technology. Okay, and then this one I really like is relighting. So basically, we have the foreground subject here, that actress. And basically, we relight her just based on whatever the background image is. In this particular case, this was the original, and then so the background's all generated here, but it works as well with you know, if you provide an input image for the background. We've tried it both ways. It's really fantastic. I mean, again, you know, you all know this, matching plate and background is really one of the key problems in visual effects, and you spend a lot of time, you know, grading and you know, trying to do all kinds of stuff to kind of get it, regrade the plate, don't get quite there. You try to redo the background, you don't quite get there. Or even worse, you know, another example is when they shot it, they had one thing in mind, but then once they're in post-production, looking at it, no, this doesn't really look that nice. Can we then move that light over there or have that spaceship come from here instead of there? And now the lighting is coming from a different source. How do you do that? And so that's what this workflow can really help with. And again, it's very fast. So and by the point with very fast also is, if you don't like the first result, it is so easy to just reiterate, you know, 20 times through this. But you also, it doesn't mean you can have any control. So this one, this relight example is actually using a light map. So you guys probably know what those light maps are. These black and white images with like highlights where you think your light source is from. And so we're using the light map basically as a second image input in addition to this one. And then the generator figures out how do you apply this lighting to these images. The left is the input, and the two right are the outputs. And again, there's some things there that an artist might even miss. You know, where the bounce really needs to go to. Like in the right one, for example, that warm-looking image. You know that there's a bounce actually on that armrest there. You know, if you had to do this by hand, you may actually miss that that's there. And that was not in the light map. So the system figured out that if the light shines on a sofa like that, right? Because it's seen plenty of examples for that kind of stuff. Okay, and so that's another thing, by the way. A lot of this is in the training data, and you know the other thing about you know, Stable Diffusion obviously is it's super easy to fine tune. So if you have a specific look, a specific style, you know, a specific character set or a specific set of environments, whatever, okay, you just, you know, fine-tune the model with it, or just create a bunch of LoRa's, like one for each actor, for example, and then you have all these identities available to work with and make it super accurate. Oh, and by the way, the other thing I wanted to say about video, which is, you know, people talk a lot about temporal consistency and character consistency and whatever. If you do it the way we're saying is, let's say you create a LoRa or a fine-tuned model for a specific actor first, then, you know, temporal consistency going forward is a lot less of a worry because you already have it all encoded in your model. It's not that the video generator all of a sudden have to come up with this thing on the fly. It works a lot better that way. And actually the relighting one actually does work in video too. So you can do crazy stuff like that if you want to. And that's the end of my presentation. I want to make sure I have a little bit of time for questions.
Any questions for Hanno?
Oh, one fan over there. Who is that?
Any questions for Hanno? Yeah. Well, the loudest person happens to win this time.
Hey, Hanno, it's Alan.
Hey, Alan.
Just wanted to curious, from a billing standpoint. First of all, the technology is outstanding. Really impressive work.
Can you speak up a little?
Oh, really impressive work, and really the intelligence behind this outstanding. But with the clients that you're working right now, how are they kind of addressing the billing on it? It sounds boring, but you're saving hours from a Photoshop or any kind of hands-on. Are they still working with rate cards that are based on by the hour, by the project? Now with AI, how are you facing that?
Well, I will. I'm not going to name the name, but I know of an executive who resisted embracing generative AI for use in visual effects because of the impact it has on billable hours, and he got fired. So it's no use. I think that's what the clients want. They want reduction in billable hours. And the way to flip this around is, yes, we're going to spend less time on a specific shot or on a specific show. We're going to make more shots. We're going to make more shows. That's how you get your billable hours. And the reason, and actually, if you think about it, I've been in this industry for a long time. The biggest problem that this industry has is how do you aggregate a meaningful audience around a piece of content, which means content creation has to become less expensive, means less billable hours per piece of content. So that's what this is about.
Hanno, over here.
I guess the question for me as a 3D person, are you going to have your software integrated into tools like Maya or Blender? So like if we need to do like texture maps, like repeating textures and then to like break up the repetition, stuff like, making variations in our models and stuff like that. Like, are we going to see those tools coming in very soon for that, where we're, using it that way, variations?
Yeah, but because we distribute our models in open weights on Hugging Face, we have a really strong user community out there that's been actually developing a lot of tooling around Stable Diffusion. And because, especially with Blender, because it's an open source project, there's actually quite a few applications that use Stable Diffusion in Blender today. And some of them are like from a year ago now. So for example, I forgot what the tool is called, but you can find it. You just Google for it, or by now ask ChatGPT, where you basically have a very simple geometry and you get a photoreal render out of it. So and actually that's another thing about rendering. Just wrap your heads around this. At some point, all you gotta need is the proxy renderer, and then you use generative AI to make it look photoreal. You're not going to have to do, weeks of CPU rendering anymore.
We have to wrap, but let's have a big hand for Hanno. And Hanno, are you going to be around today?
Thank you. And there's my very hard to guess email over there, hanno@stability.ai, if you ever need to get in touch with me.
Are you around today at the show?
I'll be here for the rest of the day. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's have another big hand for Hanno.
Thank you.
The most stable technologist here. All right.